Imagine waking up in a real Arthurian Britain. Not a fairy tale of chivalry, but a brutal fight for survival in a crumbling world where every day is a battle against chaos and invasion. If you actually woke up in Arthurian Britain of the 5th and 6th centuries, you'd find yourself in a gritty post-Roman world of wooden halls, not stone castles. The knights would be hardened warriors in leather and mail, not romantic heroes in plate armor. And King Arthur himself, if he existed at all, he was likely a Romano-British warlord, desperately trying to hold together the fragments of civilization as Roman power collapsed. Welcome to the real Arthurian Britain, where survival was a true quest and the Holy Grail was simply making it through another day. So, congratulations. You just woke up in Britain somewhere around the year 500 AD. And the first thing that hits you isn't the sights, it's the smells. Your nostrils fill with the sharp tang of what smoke mixed with the earthier sense of damp thatch and unwashed bodies. The air feels heavy with moisture, chilling you to the bone, despite the furs covering your body. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress, on a wooden platform, not exactly your comfortable memory foam back home. The one-room dwelling is dim, lit only by the soft orange glow of a small fire pit. In the center, smoke lazily drifts upward, most of it escaping through a hole in the roof, though plenty lingers to sting your eyes. Above you, the wooden rafters are blackened from years of smoke. You're not alone. Several other forms lie huddled under wool, blankets and furs. A family, you realize, all sleeping together for warmth in this single room. Not like your private bedroom with temperature control and blackout curtains. Your back aches from a hard sleeping surface. Your throat feels scratchy from breathing smoke all night. And there's an urgent pressure in your bladder that reminds you that indoor plumbing is still about 1,400 years in the future. As the first hints of dawn filter through the gaps in the walls, you hear movement outside. People already up and about. No sleeping in during the dark. Ages. Every hour of daylight is precious when your survival depends on it. A woman stirs near the fire pit, stoking the embers and adding small sticks to bring the flames back to life. She's wearing what looks like a simple brown wool dress with a cloak pinned at her shoulder, her hair covered with a linen cloth. Her face is young but weathered, marked by a life of constant work and worry. Up, she says, noticing your open eyes. The cattle need tending and Garant wants all men at the hall before midday. Her accent is strange, not quite Welsh, not quite anything you recognize. A mix of Celtic language with a touch of Latin influence. You sit up, feeling every muscle protest. This body is strong, but beaten down by hard labor. Your hands are calloused, your arms sinewy with muscle from work that your modern life never prepared you for. Near the door, you spot what must be your clothing. A rough woolen tunic, thick trousers, and leather shoes that look like they've been patched multiple times. There's also a cloak made of heavy wool, crucial protection against the damp British weather. No synthetic fabrics here. No waterproof Gore-Tex. Just wool that gets sodden in the rain and takes days to dry. Is it the Saxons again? You hear yourself ask the words, coming automatically, though you hadn't consciously formed them. The woman's face tightens. Garant had word from the eastern settlements. 3 more farms. Raided last full moon. They're pushing farther west with each season. She crosses herself, a quick, almost furtive gesture. We should be safe here behind the old Roman walls. But her voice trails off. You realize you're in a settlement built within or near the ruins of what was once a Roman fort or town. The Empire withdrew its troops nearly a century ago, but the stone foundations of Roman Civilization remained repurposed, rebuilt upon, but a shadow of their former glory. Outside, the settlement is coming to life. The wooden houses, round or rectangular with thatched roofs, clustered together for protection. Some are built directly into the remains of Roman stone, buildings using the ancient walls as foundations. Smoke rises from fire pits, and people move purposefully about their morning tasks. Children chase chickens. A man leads a thin cow toward pasture. Women carry water from a central well, a task that will be repeated multiple times throughout the day. There's none of the leisure of modern mornings. No scrolling through phones. No coffee brewing automatically. Every calorie of food, every comfort must be worked for. You see a wooden palisade surrounding the settlement, not a grand castle wall, but a practical defense of sharpened logs. Beyond it lie fields where crops grow, and beyond that the dark line of forests. The man everyone calls Garant is easy to spot. He stands a head taller than most, his bearing proud despite his simple clothing. Only details mark him as a leader, a cloak of slightly better quality, a silver pin rather than bone or wood, a knife with a decorated handle. At his belt, he's speaking with two other men near a building larger than the rest, a wooden hall with carved posts at its entrance. This is not the romanticized court of King Arthur. There are no knights in shining armor, no round table, no stone castle with fluttering banners. This is a reality of post-Roman Britain, a struggling society trying to maintain order after the collapse of empire, facing threats from nature, raiders, and the slow loss of Roman knowledge and technology. You make your way to a small stream running through the settlement to wash the sleep from your face. The water is bracingly cold, but it helps clear your mind. Around you, people nod in greeting, calling you by a name you somehow know is yours in this place. Bedwyr, as you splash the cold water on your face, an old man approaches. His beard is white, his back bent with age, but his eyes are sharp and knowing. The people call him Merdin, and they both respect and fear him. He's what passes for a physician, a keeper of herbal knowledge, and some whisper he knows magic from the old ways before the Christ God came to these shores. You dreamed again, Merdin says. It's not a question. You did dream of strange metal, carriages that move without horses, of buildings that touch the sky, of a world so different from this one that it seems impossible that those dreams are fading, now replaced by the immediate needs of survival in this harsher world. The dreams will pass, Merdin tells you. They always do. He hands you a small leather pouch. Brew this with hot water and drink it before you go to the hall. It will clear your mind. You take the pouch knowing it contains herbs, maybe willow bark for headaches, maybe something else from Merdin's extensive knowledge of plants. In this world without modern medicine, such knowledge is power. The settlement has a name, Camlan. It means crooked bank, referring to the bend in the river nearby. You've lived here for as long as you can remember in this life, though sometimes those other dreams make you question everything. Most of the people here are farmers, but many are also warriors when needed. The Romans taught Britain's organization, and those lessons haven't been entirely forgotten. When Saxon raiders come, the farmers take up spears and shields, forming a shield wall under Garant's command. Garant himself was trained by a man who was trained by a man who served in the Roman cavalry. He's trying to maintain that military knowledge, that discipline, even as it fades with each generation. That's why he wants all men at the hall today for training, for preparation. The Saxons are getting bolder. After washing, you return to the dwelling for a quick breakfast, a piece of coarse bread and some hard cheese washed down with ale that's safer to drink than the water. The woman your sister in this life, hands you a wooden bowl of porridge made from oats and barley. It's bland but filling, sprinkled with a few precious dried berries. Eat, she says. Who knows when Garant will let you break for food? As you eat, you notice a small wooden cross hanging near the door, a sign of the new religion that has taken root in Britain. But beside it, nearly hidden, is a much older symbol carved into the doorpost, a protection sign from the old ways. Like many in this time, your family hedges their bets, honoring both the Christ God and the older deities. Your sister's husband enters already, sweating from morning work. He's a smith, one of the most valuable members of the community. The ability to work metal, to repair tools, to forge weapons, makes him essential to survival. His forearms bear the scars of his trade, burns from flying sparks and molten metal. Garant is in a mood, he says, tearing off a piece of bread. A messenger came before dawn from Glevum. The Latin name for Gloucester sounds strange in his British accent. What news? Your sister asks, immediately tense. The usual Saxon's rating, but also word of a new leader among the British kingdoms. Someone who's uniting the old tribes against the Saxon threat. He pauses. They call him Arthur, or Arturius. Some say he served Rome before the legions left. The name sends a strange chill down your spine. Arthur, the once and future king. But this is no storybook figure, just a warlord trying to push back against the tide of invasion, try and preserve something of Roman civilization in a world that's forgetting more with each passing year. You finish your breakfast and step back into the cool morning air. The mist is burning off now, revealing a settlement. That's a strange mix of Roman remnants and native British construction. Stone, foundations supporting wooden buildings. Straight Roman roads now muddy and rutted. A crumbling bathhouse repurposed as a storehouse. It's time to head to the hall and hear what Garant has to say. Perhaps news of this Arthur. Perhaps just more preparation for the constant threat of raiders. Either way, survival in this world requires vigilance, community, and the willingness to fight when necessary. As you walk toward the hall, you realize that nothing about this place resembles the Camelot of legend. There are no tournaments, no ladies in waiting, no quest for magical items. The reality of Arthur's Britain, if this truly is the time of the historical figure behind a legend, is about the desperate fight to maintain civilization against external threats and internal collapse. The Round Table, at best, it might be a gathering of tribal leaders trying to set aside generations of feuding to face a common enemy. Excalibur, perhaps just a well-crafted sword, valuable beyond measure in a time when good steel is rare. The holy grail for these people. A good harvest and a winter without raids would be miracle enough. The wooden hall looms ahead, smoke rising from its central hearth. Men are gathering, some clearly farmers by their rough hands and practical clothing, others with the bearing of warriors, former Roman, auxiliaries, or their sons and grandsons try and maintain military traditions. In a world where Roman discipline is becoming a distant memory, inside the hall, the air is thick with smoke and the smell of unwashed bodies. Wooden benches line the walls, and at the far end is a slightly raised platform where Garant will speak. Shields and spears hang on the walls. Practical weapons not. Ornamental. This is where the community makes decisions, where disputes are settled, where preparation for war is discussed. You find a place on one of the benches, nodding to men you've known your entire life in this world. There's a tension in the air, an anticipation. News from the outside world is rare and precious, and news of someone successfully standing against a Saxon advance. That would be hope, something in short supply these days. As the hall fills with men, the smoke from the central fire makes your eyes water. There are no chimneys, just a hole in a roof that doesn't quite do its job. The wooden beams above are black with years of soot. Carvings adorn some of the posts, symbols of protection. Images of boar and eagles, some Christian crosses mixed with older pagan designs. Garant enters last, accompanied by a man you don't recognize. This must be the messenger. The stranger's cloak is travel-stained, his face gaunt from hard riding. He carries himself like a warrior, hand never straying far from the knife at his belt. The hall gradually falls silent as Garant takes his place on the platform. Unlike the kings of later medieval legend, he wears no crown, no royal robes. Only his bearing and the quality of his cloak and brooch mark him as a leader. Man of Camlan, he begins, his voice carrying to the corners of the smoky hall. Our guest brings word from the east. The Saxons have taken another settlement near Carinium, the Latin name for Cirencester doesn't sound natural on his tongue, a reminder that Roman civilization is fading from memory with each generation. A murmur passes through the crowd. Carinium is not far enough away for comfort, but he also brings word of hope. Garant continues. A leader has emerged among the kingdom of Dumnonia, a man trained in Roman ways who remembers the discipline of the legions. He has won 3 battles against the Saxon advance and now calls for all British kingdoms to unite against a common threat. The messenger steps forward. His name is Arthurian. He says, his accent marking him as from farther south. Though our people call him Arthur, he sends word to all settlements still loyal to the ways of Britain and Rome. The Saxons could be defeated, but only if we stand together. Another murmur, this time with an edge of hope. In a world of constant threats and gradual decline, the idea of successfully pushing back against a Saxon advance seems almost miraculous. He calls for men. The messenger continues. Warriors, if you have them, but also smiths, carpenters, those who can support an army. He establishes his court at Cadbury Hill, fortifying the old hill fort there. So this is how legends begin. You think, not with magical swords or holy quests, but with the practical needs of warfare and survival. A hill fort becomes Camelot. A war leader becomes a king. Loyal warriors become knights of the Round Table. As the messenger continues, detailing the victories of this Arthur, you can feel the mood in the hall shifting. For so long your people have been on the defensive, watching Roman civilization crumble around them, feeling the pressure of Saxon expansion from the east. The idea that someone is successfully fighting back kindles something that's been missing, hope. But you also notice the skeptics, older men, who have heard promises before, who have seen would-be leaders rise and fall, who understand that uniting the notoriously fractious British kingdoms with their long-standing feuds and rivalries will be nearly impossible. What proof do we have of these victories? One man calls out, words of wind. The messenger reaches into a pouch at his belt and pulls out something that gleams in the firelight. A Saxon brooch decorated with intricate animal designs taken from a Saxon war leader at the battle near the old fortress of Belgram. He says, one of many such trophies. He passes the brooch to Garant, who examines it closely before passing it around the hall. When it reaches you, you feel the solid weight of silver. See the craftsmanship that went into its making. This is no trivial ornament, but a symbol of status among the Saxon invaders. Arthur asks not for fealty, the messenger continues, but for alliance. Each kingdom remains under its own leader, but all agree to come together against a Saxon threat, to share information, to support each other's defenses, to unite when large forces threaten. This doesn't match the legends you vaguely remember from those other dreams of knights swearing allegiance to a high king, but it makes sense for this world where local identity is strong and central authority has been absent since the Romans left. And what does this Arthur offer in return? Another man asks, protection, training in Roman military. Tactics, a share in plunder taken from Saxon settlements. The messenger pauses, and survival. Alone, each British kingdom will eventually fall. Together, we have a chance. As the discussion continues, you find yourself watching the faces around you. These are men who have known nothing but the slow decline of civilization in their lifetimes, who have watched Roman roads crumble, Roman buildings fall into disrepair, Roman knowledge fade, who have seen Saxon settlements push gradually westward year by year. For them, there is no glorious Arthurian age ahead, only the daily struggle to maintain what remains of civilization, to preserve what knowledge they can, to survive in a world where the light of Rome has dimmed and a new order has yet to fully emerge. This is the real Britain of Arthur's time, not a golden age of chivalry, but a desperate fight for cultural and physical survival, a time when the old Roman world is dying but still remembered, when Christianity exists alongside older pagan beliefs, when the tribes at Rome, once unified, are fragmenting back into separate kingdoms. And yet in this harsh reality, you can see the seeds of the later legends. A leader who inspires hope, warriors loyal to a cause greater than themselves, the struggle against a seemingly unstoppable enemy, the desire to preserve civilization against the forces of chaos. As Garant calls for silence to consider the messenger's words, you realize that the true story of Arthur, if this is indeed the historical figure behind the myth, is more compelling than the romantic legends that would later emerge. This is about real people facing real threats, finding courage in desperate times, holding on to the remnants of civilization when it would be easier to let it all slip away. The hall has grown warmer as more bodies fill the space. Sweat mingles with the smell of smoke and unwashed wool. These are not the pristine knights of later legend, but hard-working men who know that survival requires both the sword and the plow, both courage in battle and the daily discipline of agriculture. Garant raises his hand for silence, and gradually the murmurs die down. "We will consider this call carefully," he says. "If we send men to this Arthur, we weaken our own defenses. But if he truly can unite the British kingdoms against the Saxon threat," he doesn't finish the thought. He doesn't need to. Everyone here understands the stakes. "Tonight we will feast." Garant announces to honor our messenger and to discuss this matter fully. Let all who have thoughts on this bring them forward. Then, as men begin to file out of the smoky hall back to their daily tasks, you remain seated, turning over the messenger's words in your mind. Could this Arthur truly unite the British kingdoms? Could he push back the Saxon advance? Or is he just another warlord making promises he can't keep? Outside, the sun has risen fully now, burning away the morning mist. The settlement bustles with activity. Women weaving, children tending to chickens, men repairing tools, or working in the fields beyond the palisade. Life continues with its daily rhythms as it must. For all the talk of Arthur and alliance, these immediate concerns remain paramount. Ensuring there's enough food stored for winter, maintaining the defenses, keeping the fragile flame of civilization alive in this small corner of post-Roman Britain. You make your way toward the smith's forge, where your sister's husband is already at work, hammering a piece of glowing metal on his anvil. The heat from the forge is welcome in the cool morning air. "So," he says, not looking up from his work, "talk of Arthur. You've heard of him?" You ask. He dips the metal into a bucket of water, which hisses and steams. "Rumors. A war leader from the West. Some say he was trained by the last of the Roman commanders. Others say he's of royal British blood." He shrugs. "What matters is whether he can actually unite our quarrelsome kingdoms." You nod, understanding his skepticism. Since the Romans withdrew their legions, Britain has fragmented back into its old tribal divisions. The discipline and unity that Rome imposed is fading with each generation. If he's truly winning battles against the Saxons, you say that alone makes him worthy of consideration. The smith grunts, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. He pulls the metal from the water, part of a plow that broke during yesterday's work in the fields. In this world, every tool is precious, every piece of metal worth salvaging and repairing. As you help him with the bellows, pumping to keep the forge hot, you consider what you've learned this morning. The historical Arthur, if this is indeed him, bears little resemblance to the legendary king of later medieval romances. There is no Guinevere mentioned, no Lancelot, no magical Merlin, though perhaps Merdin, the old healer, might be the seed of that later character. This Arthur is a war leader, a protector, a unifier, but very much a man of his time, facing the practical challenges of a world where Roman civilization is crumbling and a new order struggles to be born. The bellows wheeze as you pump them, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The smith's hammer rings against the anvil, a rhythm as old as civilization itself. Beyond the forge, you can see children playing a game with stones, women carrying water from the well, men checking the palisade for weak spots that need repair. This is the real Arthurian Britain, not a fantastical Camelot, but a community of people working together to survive in challenging times, preserving what knowledge they can, adapting to a world where the old certainties have vanished and new threats loom on the horizon. And somewhere to the west, a leader named Arthur is trying to unite these scattered communities against the Saxon, advance to preserve something of Roman civilization and British identity in a world sliding toward fragmentation and conflict. The once and future king, not as legend would later portray him, but as he might truly have been, a man fighting against a tide of history, trying to build something lasting in an age of crumbling certainties. The smith hands you a wooden bucket. Make yourself useful. The forge needs water. You take the bucket to the small stream that runs through the settlement. Other people are already there. Women washing clothing by beating it with smooth stones. Children filling water. Jugs. A man gutting fish caught earlier that morning. The stream is a central feature of life here, providing water for drinking upstream, washing midstream, and carrying away waste downstream. As you fill the bucket, you notice how everyone moves with purpose. There's no idle scrolling, no, just one more episode before starting the day. In post, Roman Britain, laziness isn't just frowned upon, it's potentially fatal. Every day requires work to ensure survival. The water sloshes in your bucket as you walk back to the forge. Your arms already ache and the day has barely begun. Modern gyms would be a joke to these people. Their entire existence is physical labor. Thanks. The smith grunts, taking the water. He doesn't waste words. In this world, even conversation is economical. His forge is a simple structure, a stone hearth with bellows to heat the fire hot enough to work metal. The tools hanging on the walls are precious beyond measure. Without the complex trade networks of Rome, each metal implement must be maintained, repaired, reused. Nothing is disposable. Garant wants spear points, he tells you. 10 by week's end. That confirms your suspicions. Garant is seriously considering sending men to join Arthur's forces. Each spear requires precious iron, each point representing hours of skilled labor. Will we have enough iron, you ask? The smith's face darkens. Will melt down. Some old Roman fittings from the abandoned villa. The roof braces should yield enough. He shakes his head, tearing apart what the Romans built to arm ourselves. There's a sad poetry to it. This is how your world works now. Scavenging the remains of a fallen empire to defend against new threats. The great engineering projects of Rome once the wonder of the known world, now serve as convenient quarries for building, materials and sources of metal. You leave the smith to his work and head toward the fields outside the settlement's wooden palisade. It's time for your own daily labor, helping with the spring planting. The settlement's survival through the next winter depends on what goes into the ground today. Outside the palisade, the land has been clear of trees over generations, creating fields for crops. Men and women work side by side using wooden plows, pulled by oxen. The plow design is ancient, a wooden blade that scratches the surface of the soil rather than turning it over deeply. It's inefficient by modern standards, but it's what they have. Bedwyr, a man waves you over. We need another hand with the cedars. You join a group walking slowly across a field already plowed. Each person carries a bag of precious seed grain, barley mostly, with some wheat and oats. You reach into your bag and begin the careful work of broadcasting seed, trying to spread it evenly while not wasting a single kernel. This isn't the wheat modern farmers would recognize. This is spelt, an ancient variety with lower yields but greater hardiness. Some fields show the beginnings of emmer wheat, another ancient grain that modern agriculture has largely abandoned. The bread made from these grains will be coarser and heavier than modern loaves, but it will sustain life. As you work, you listen to the conversations around you. This is how news travels in a world without mass media, person to person, field to field, settlement to settlement. My cousin at Carinium says the Saxons are settling, not just raiding, one man says. Building houses, bringing families. That's worse than raiding, another replies. Raiders leave, settlers stay. They farm differently than us. A third adds. Strip fields. They call them long, narrow plots. Their plows cut deeper, I've heard, turn the soil completely. These seemingly mundane agricultural details carry heavy significance. The Saxons aren't just attacking and leaving. They're changing the very landscape, imposing new patterns of farming and land ownership. The British way of life is being overwritten. Field by field, settlement by settlement. A woman carrying water to the workers pauses near your group. Jaren's wife says he's going to send 20 men to this Arthur. She says, news travels fast in small communities. 20? Someone exclaims. That's a quarter of our fighting strength. If Arthur can push the Saxons back, it's worth it. Another counters. Better to fight them in their settlements than wait for them to come to ours. And if he fails, if our men die for nothing, there's no easy answer to that question. Every decision in this world carries weight, consequences that can mean life or death for community. The sun climbs higher as you work. Your back aches from the constant stooping motion of seating. Sweat soaks through your woolen tunic, making it cling uncomfortably to your skin. The fabric is rough against your skin. No soft cotton blends here. Just sheep's wool processed by hand, spun, and woven by the women of the settlement during the long winter months. Your clothing is practical, designed for work and wear. The tunic reaches to your knees, belted at the waist with a strip of leather. Your trousers are loose-fitting, tied at the ankles to keep out debris. The shoes on your feet are simple leather affairs, the soles already wearing thin in places. In the winter, you wrap your legs in wool strips for added warmth. In summer, you sometimes go barefoot to save the precious shoes. None of the vibrant colors of later medieval clothing exist here. Your garments are the natural colors of wool, browns, grays, off-whites. Some wealthier members of the community might have clothing dyed with plant materials. Blue from woad, yellow from weld, red from madder. But these are luxury items, signs of status. At midday, work pauses briefly for a meal. You sit with others in the shade of a large oak at the field's edge, eating bread and cheese. drinking ale from a shared wooden cup that's passed around. The ale is weak, but safer than water from questionable sources. It's not for intoxication, but hydration, though a stronger brew will surely be served at tonight's feast. My father remembers when fields stretched all the way to the old Roman road. An older man says, gesturing toward the distant forest edge, now the woods reclaim more land each year. Not enough hands to work. The soil, this is another reality of your world. Population decline, whether from disease, warfare, or immigration to safer regions, there are fewer people now than during the height of Roman Britain. Nature is slowly reclaiming abandoned farmland, erasing the achievements of previous generations. The old villa had paintings on the walls. He continues, scenes of gods and nymphs all rotted away now. Roof, collapsed in my grandfather's time. These casual references to lost knowledge and decaying infrastructure are common. Your people live among the ruins of a more advanced civilization, using what they can, watching the rest crumble year by year. It's a strange feeling being surrounded by evidence that things were once better, more sophisticated, more comfortable. After the brief meal, work resumes. Different fields need different attention. Some are being plowed, others seeded, some weeded. A few men repair stone walls that mark field boundaries and keep livestock contained. Women work alongside men in most tasks, though some jobs are traditionally gendered. The heaviest plowing is men's work. The finest weaving is women's. As you help repair a section of stone wall, you listen to two older men discuss the news of Arthur. They say he was trained by Ambrosius Aurelianus himself. One says, struggling to lift a heavy stone into place. The name triggers something in your memory. Ambrosius was a historical figure, a Romano-British war leader who fought against Saxon expansion in the late 5th century. If Arthur trained under him, that would place this time somewhere in the early 6th century. Ambrosius was the last who remembered Rome properly. The other man replies, his family were senators. They say Arthur is just a warlord with a good sword arm. A good sword arm is what we need right now. The Bishop of Glevum supports him. The bishop supports whoever keeps his church safe. Religion, in your world, is a complex matter. Christianity is established but exists alongside older beliefs. The Roman Church organization remains with bishops in major towns, but their authority is limited to spiritual matters. Secular power rests with local leaders like Garant or regional kings who control larger territories. Even within Christianity, practices vary widely from community to community. Some settlements maintain Latin services, preserving the Roman traditions. Others conduct worship in British languages. And everywhere old pagan customs persist beneath a veneer of Christian observance. Sacred wells rededicated to saints. Old festivals given new Christian meanings. By mid-afternoon, you've moved to another task, helping construct a new storage building near the center of the settlement. The Romans built in stone, but your people build primarily in wood and thatch. It's not that the knowledge of stonework is entirely lost. It's that the complex organization required for quarrying, transporting, and setting large stones no longer exists. The new building follows a simple design. Post holes are dug and upright. Timbers set into them. Horizontal beams will connect these posts, and walls will be made of wattle and daub, a weave of flexible branches covered with a mixture of clay, straw, and manure that dries to a solid surface. The roof will be thatched with reeds from the nearby marshes. As you help dig the post holes, a rider approaches the settlement, not the messenger from this morning, but someone from a nearby community. He speaks briefly with the guards at the palisade gate, then is escorted directly to Garant's hall. Word spreads quickly. Saxon raiders have struck a settlement 2 days' ride to the east, burning crops and stealing livestock. They were driven off, but 3 defenders were killed and several buildings destroyed. Getting bolder, mutters the man working beside you. Used to be they stayed close to their own settlements. Now they range farther with each season. These constant low-level threats are part of life in Arthur's Britain. Not major invasions with armies, but small-scale violence that gradually wears down resistance, forces abandonment of outlying farms, and pushes the frontier of Saxon influence westward year by year. By late afternoon, the post holes are dug and the main timbers for the new building are in place. It's satisfying work, creating something that will benefit the whole community. The storage building will hold grain from the autumn harvest, keeping it safe from weather and vermin through the winter. As the work crew takes a break, you notice a small group of children watching from a distance. Their clothes are similar to adult garments, just smaller. There's no special children's clothing in this world. From about age 7, children are expected to contribute to the community's work, taking on increasingly demanding tasks. As they grow, one boy about 10 years old is showing the other something, a small carved wooden sword. He adopts a fighting stance, mimicking the movements he's seen the warriors practice. My father says Arthur has a magic sword. He announces importantly, pulled from a stone where the old gods placed it. Another boy scoffs. My grandfather says that's just a story. His sword was forged by the best smith in Demonia. That's all is not. It's magical. Kill Saxons with one blow. Even now the legend is forming, reality transforming into myth. The historical Arthur, if the war leader you've heard about today, is indeed the basis of the later legends, is already being wrapped in supernatural elements, his accomplishments magnified by eager retellings. You smile at the children's argument. Human nature doesn't change. Even in this harsh world, children play, imagine, argue about heroes. Their games are different from the video games and sports of your dream world, but the impulse is the same. As the afternoon wanes, you're called to help with another task. Butchering a pig that's been slaughtered for the evening's feast. Nothing is wasted. The blood is collected for pudding. The intestines cleaned for sausage casings. The bones saved for broth and tools. Even the bladder will be dried and used as a container. This is another aspect of life in Arthur's Britain, the intimate connection with the sources of your food. There's no sanitized packaging, no disconnection between the animal and the meal. Everyone understands where food comes from because they're directly involved in its production. The pig represents significant wealth. Most protein in your diet comes from dairy, milk, cheese, and whey from the settlement's precious cattle and goats. Meat is reserved for special occasions, like tonight's feast to honor the messenger and discuss Arthur's call for alliance. As the pig is prepared, you can see other feast preparations underway. Women are baking extra bread in clay ovens. Children gather wild greens and early spring onions to supplement the meal. A barrel of stronger ale is brought from storage. This is the good stuff brewed with honey for special occasions, not the weak everyday drink. The smell of roasting pork begins to fill the settlement as the afternoon light turns golden. Your stomach growls in anticipation after a day of hard physical labor. Your body craves the fat and protein from the meat, the carbohydrates from bread, and ale. Before the feast, there's time to return to your dwelling and clean up. Your sister has heated water. Not enough for a full bath. That would be an unimaginable luxury, but enough to wash your face, hands, and feet. Clean straw has been spread on the floor and fresh. Rushes mixed with dried herbs to give a pleasant scent to the small space. Garant's made his decision. Your sister tells you as you wash. 20 men to join Arthur's forces. The names will be announced at the feast. Will I be among them? You ask, surprising yourself with a question. She looks at you with concern. You've been having those dreams again, haven't you? The ones that make you speak strangely? You nod, not sure. How to explain? Merdin says they're messages from the old gods. She continues that you're meant for something important. She crosses herself quickly, then adds, or perhaps it's Christ showing you visions. Either way, Garant listens when Merdin speaks of you. This adds a new dimension to your understanding of your place in this world. You're not just an ordinary member of the community, but someone marked as different, perhaps special. The dreams of another world, your real world, are interpreted here as divine or magical messages. Your sister helps you change into slightly better clothing for the feast, a tunic with simple embroidery at the neck and cuffs, a cloak of finer wool. Status in the society isn't displayed through flashy jewelry or extravagant clothing, but through subtle indicators of quality, tighter weaving, small decorative touches, slightly richer natural dyes. As you prepare, your sister's husband returns from the forge, his face streaked with soot, his arms bearing fresh minor burns from flying sparks. The smith's work is dangerous but essential. Garant came to check on the spear points. He says, washing his hands and face. He's serious about this alliance with Arthur. Do you think it's the right choice? Your sister asks, helping him clean a particularly bad smudge from his neck. He considers the question carefully. If this Arthur truly has Roman training, truly understand how to use disciplined forces against the Saxon bands, then, yes, we can't defeat them settlement by settlement. We need unity. Unity is a rare commodity in post-Roman Britain. The departure of Roman authority didn't create a vacuum. It revealed the old tribal divisions that had always existed. Beneath the surface of Roman administration, getting British kingdoms to work together is like herding cats, each fiercely independent, each suspicious of the other's motives. They say Arthur is of royal blood. Your sister offers from the line of Constantine himself. The smith snorts. Everyone claims descent from Constantine these days. What matters is whether his tactics work, not his ancestry. This pragmatism is typical of your world. Grand claims of heritage are less important than practical results. Can you grow crops? Can you forge weapons? Can you defend against raiders? These skills determine your worth to the community. Clean and dressed in your best clothing, which would still look shabby by later medieval standards, let alone modern ones. You head toward the central hall, where the feast will take place. The same building that hosted the morning meeting has been transformed. Long tables have been set up, benches arranged along them. The central hearth blazes, smoke rising to the hole in the roof. Torches and rushlights provide additional illumination. As the evening approaches, the hall fills gradually as people finish their day's work and make their way to the feast. There's a buzz of conversation, a sense of anticipation. Such gatherings serve multiple purposes. They're not just for food and announcements, but for strengthening community bonds, for gossip and matchmaking, for settling minor disputes informally. You find a place on one of the benches, nodding to those around you. The high table at the end of the hall is reserved for Garant, his family, and honored guests, including the messenger from Arthur. As the last daylight fades, outside, Garant enters the hall. The crowd quiets as he takes his place at the high table. The messenger sits to his right, looking less travel-worn after a day's rest. Merdin, the old healer who spoke to you this morning, sits to Garant's left, a position of honor that speaks to his importance in the community. Servants, really just younger members of the community assigned to the task, begin bringing food to the tables. Wooden trenches of roast pork, baskets of bread, bowls of spring greens dressed with vinegar. The smell is mouth-watering. After a day of hard labor, Garant stands raising his hands for silence. Before we feast, he announces, "Let us thank God for this food, for our community, and for the message of hope brought to us today." A prayer follows, a mixture of Latin phrases and British language. Another example of how your world bridges the fading Roman past and the emerging medieval future. Some people cross themselves in the Christian manner. Others make older, more subtle gestures of reverence beneath the table. Then the feast begins in earnest. You tear into the food with the appetite of someone who has worked physically all day. The pork is fatty and rich, the bread dense and filling, the greens sharp and tangy. Ale flows freely, passing wooden cups and horns from person to person. This is Arthur's Britain, not the refined court of later legends, but a world of practical concerns, of hard work and simple pleasures, of communities struggling to maintain civilization in the face of external threats and internal divisions. A world where the seeds of grand myths are being planted in the soil of ordinary human experiences. As you eat and drink, you can't help but wonder, will you be among those chosen to join Arthur's forces? And if so, will you meet the man himself, the historical figure behind the once and future king of legend? The feast continues, conversations flowing as freely as the ale. You're seated among the ordinary folk, farmers, craftspeople, hunters, rather than at the high table with Garant and his honored guests. The suits you find. Here the talk is more honest, less concerned with politics and appearances. Pass the bread. A farmer named Gwyn says, reaching across the table. His hands are permanently stained with soil, fingernails rimmed with dirt that no amount of washing will remove. Gods, I was hungry. Nothing like a day breaking soil to empty your belly. You pass the rough wooden platter stacked with dense dark bread. It bears little resemblance to the light, fluffy loaves of your dream world. This bread is heavy, made from coarsely ground barley and spelt, baked in clay ovens. But after a day of physical labor, it tastes better than any fancy modern bakery confection. Heard you were at the meeting this morning? Gwyn continues between bites. This Arthur fellow, you think he's the real thing or just another warlord with big talk? Before you can answer, an older man named Cater leans in. I fought alongside Ambrosius Aurelianus in my youth, he says, the ale loosening his tongue. Now there was a leader, Roman, blood, Roman training. If this Arthur learned from him, he might have something to offer. Roman blood means nothing these days. Another man counters. Been 40 years since the last Roman tax collector. Good riddance to them. I say, this sentiment, ambivalence toward Rome is common. On one hand, people recognize that life was more orderly, more prosperous under Roman rule. On the other, they resent the taxes, the conscription, the foreign control. It's a complicated relationship with the past. That colors everything in your world. Halfway through the meal, Garant stands, again raising his hand for silence. The buzz of conversation gradually dies down. Friends, he begins, we have heard the call from Arthur of Dumnonia. He seeks allies against the Saxon advance. He pauses, looking around the hall. I have decided to answer that call. A murmur passes through the crowd, some approving, some concerned. 20 men will join Arthur's forces, Garant continues. They will carry our weapons, our hopes, and our commitment to the British cause. He begins to read names from a small piece of precious parchment. Each name brings a reaction. Proud nods from some, worried glances from others. These 20 men will be leaving their families, their fields, their daily lives to fight. For a leader many have only just heard of, your name is among them. A mix of emotions washes over you. Pride at being selected. Anxiety about what lies ahead. curiosity about whether you'll meet the historical Arthur face to face. Your sister's words come back to you, that Merdin believes your strange dreams mark you for something important. After the names are read, Garant calls for the messenger to speak again. The man stands, more confident now, fed and rested. Arthur thanks you for your support, he says, his voice carrying through the hall. Your men will join others from settlements throughout the western kingdoms. Together we will show the Saxons that Britain remains strong, that the spirit of Rome lives on in our courage and discipline. It's a good speech, rousing enough to bring cheers from the crowd. But you notice some remain silent, their faces troubled. Not everyone believes in this alliance, this Arthur, this call to battle. Some fear it will only bring more suffering, more loss. After the announcements, the mood shifts back to celebration. A man pulls out a small wooden pipe and begins to play a lively tune. Others join in with simple percussion, a drum made from stretched hide, sticks beaten against wooden bowls. The music is nothing like the complex melodies of later medieval courts, but has a primal energy that gets feet tapping and hands clapping. Some people clear a space for dancing. Simple folk dances with circular patterns and hand clapping. The steps are familiar to everyone, learned from childhood. Even in these hard times, music and dance remain essential parts of community life, ways to forge bonds and forget troubles, if only for an evening. You're approached by a young woman named Rian. Her family farms the land adjacent to your sister's dwelling. In this world, most marriages are practical arrangements, partnerships for survival rather than romantic unions. But attraction still plays its part, and Rian has made her interest in you clear in recent months. So you're to join Arthur's men, she says, handing you a cup of ale. Her fingers brush yours. Deliberately, when you leave, with the messenger 2 days from now, you hear yourself answer. If the weather holds, she nods, a strand of dark hair falling across her face. Unlike the elaborate hairstyles of later medieval noble women, her hair is simply braided and partially covered with a linen cloth, practical for daily work. My brother went to fight 3 summers ago, she says, her voice growing quieter. With a war band from Glevum, we've had no words since. This is common in your world. People leaving, disappearing into the chaos of these troubled times. No death notification, no body to bury, just absence and uncertainty. I'm sorry, you say, meaning it, she shrugs, trying to recapture the festive mood. It's how things are. Will you dance? You join the circle of dancers, following the simple steps, clapping on cue, turning when the music indicates. Rian's hand is callous, but warm in yours. For a brief time, the concerns about Arthur, Saxons, and survival fade into the background. As the evening progresses, you notice Merdin watching you from his place at the high table. The old man's eyes are keen despite his age, missing nothing. When your gaze meets his, he raises his cup slightly, a gesture that might be a toast or something more significant. The feast begins to wind down as people drift away to their dwellings. Tomorrow will bring another day of work. Crops don't care about celebrations or war councils. The rhythm of agricultural life continues regardless of politics. You're about to leave when Merdin approaches, moving with surprising agility for his age. A word, Bedwyr, he says quietly. It's not a request, but a command. You follow him outside where the spring night is cool and clear. Stars blanket the sky, brighter, more numerous than in your dream world of light pollution. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a road of light. Merdin leads you to a small structure near the edge of the settlement. His dwelling and workshop, unlike the other single-room homes, his space is divided. One area serves as living quarters, the other as a place for his healing work and study. Inside, herbs hang from the rafters, drying shelves hold clay pots of salves and tinctures. A table is covered with parchment scraps, precious writing materials in a world where literacy is increasingly rare. Merdin is one of the few in the settlement who can read and write, preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. He lights a small oil lamp, a luxury, item likely salvaged from Roman ruins. The flame casts dancing shadows on the walls. "You're having the dreams again," he says without preamble. You nod, uncertain how much to reveal. "Tell me," he commands, sitting on a wooden stool and gesturing for you to do the same. You describe fragments of your dreams. Metal carriages that move without horses, buildings that touch the sky, devices that connect people across vast distances. You're careful not to be too specific, afraid of sounding mad. Merdin listens intently, his weathered face revealing nothing. When you finish, he's silent for a long moment. Some say, such dreams are memories of the future. He finally says, others that they're glimpses of another world entirely. He holds up a hand to stop your question. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they mark you. The old gods, or perhaps the Christian one, have touched your mind. He reaches for a small wooden box on a shelf, opening it to reveal a handful of small objects. He selects something and holds it out to you. A Roman coin, its surface worn, but the emperor's profile still visible. Constantine, he says, the emperor who embraced the Christ God. He changed the world. Merdin turns a coin over in his gnarled fingers. They say Arthur carries Constantine's blood, that he was born to unite the British kingdoms as Constantine united the empire. Do you believe that? You ask. Merdin's lips twist in what might be a smile. I believe in what works, Bedwyr. If Arthur can unite our quarrelsome kings against a Saxon threat, I care little. For his bloodline, he pockets the coin. But symbols matter. Stories matter. They give people something to rally behind. Is that why Garant chose me? Because of my dreams? Partly. Merdin rises, moving to the table covered with parchments. Partly because you're strong, skilled with a spear, and have no wife or children to leave behind. He sorts through the scraps until he finds what he's looking for. A crude map drawn on vellum. And partly because I asked him to. This surprises you? Why? Merdin spreads the map on the table. It shows Western Britain. Though the proportions are inexact, the coastline's approximate. Settlements are marked with small symbols, including Camlan, because something is happening, Bedwyr, something beyond Saxon raids and British alliances. His finger traces a pattern across the map. Reports come to me from other healers, other wise ones. Strange. Occurrences, lights in the sky. Children born with the ability to see what others cannot. Animals behaving oddly. He looks up at you in dreams. Dreams like yours. You're not sure what to make of this. Is Merdin speaking of supernatural events, or trying to interpret natural phenomena through a pre-scientific worldview? What does it mean? You ask. That is what I want you to discover. Merdin rolls up the map and hands it to you. When you reach Arthur's court, seek out a man named Taliesin. He gathers knowledge as I do. Share your dreams with him. Learn what he knows. The name triggers another fragment of memory. Taliesin, a figure from Welsh legend, a bard with supernatural powers. Is this the historical basis for that character? I'm just a farmer, you protest. Not a warrior, not a scholar. Merdin's gaze is penetrating. You are what your time needs you be, Bedwyr, as are we all. The conversation is interrupted by shouting from the settlement's main gate. Both of you rush outside to see what's happening. A rider has arrived, not the messenger from Arthur, but a local man, one of the hunters who ranges the forest surrounding Camlan. He's breathing hard, his horse lathered with sweat. Raiders, he gasps as Garant emerges from the hall. Saxon band moving along the old Roman road. 20, maybe 30. Men. The settlement erupts into activity. Men grab spears and shields. From their homes, women usher children inside. Some begin filling water. Buckets. Fire is always the greatest danger during raids. Garant takes. Command, his voice cutting to the panic. Cater, take 10 men to the north. Wall, Maddock, the same to the south. Bedwyr, get the women and children to the old Roman storehouse. The stone, walls will protect them if the raiders breach the palisade. You spring into action, helping to organize the evacuation of the most vulnerable to the one stone building in the settlement, a remnant of the Roman. Present originally used for grain storage, its walls still solid after a century of neglect. Inside the storehouse, the atmosphere is tense but controlled. The women of Camlan are not helpless. Many hold knives or improvised weapons, ready to defend their children if necessary. They've been through raids before. They know what to do. Rian is among them, clutching the hand of A, small girl, her niece. You realize she gives you a tense nod as you help. Organize the space, making sure everyone is inside and accounted for. Stay here. You tell her. Bar the door from inside. Open only to Garant's voice or mine. She nods again, her face pale but determined. Be careful, Bedwyr. Outside, you join the men at the palisade. The wooden wall surrounding the settlement isn't impressive by later medieval standards. No high stone curtain wall, no towers or battlements, but the sharpened logs set deep into the earth and reinforced with packed soil provide effective protection against small raiding parties. Night has fully fallen now, making it harder to spot movement in the surrounding countryside. Torches are lit along the palisade, but they create many shadows as they dispel. There, someone hisses, pointing in the distance. You can see moving lights, torches carried by the approaching raiders. They're making no attempt at stealth, which is concerning. Raiders who don't fear detection are either very confident or very desperate. Why attack at night? A young man beside you whispers, his hands trembling slightly on his spear. Raiders usually come at dawn. An older warrior answers, his voice low, because they're not just raiders. Look at their formation, their pace. Those are warriors, not thieves. He's right. You realize the approaching. Force moves with discipline, maintaining regular intervals between torches. This isn't a random band looking for easy plunder, but an organized unit with military training. Saxons learning Roman tactics. Someone mutters, God help us. This is the great. Fear the British kingdoms. Not just facing greater numbers or better weapons, but losing their remaining advantage of Roman military knowledge. If the Saxons begin adopting the very tactics that made Rome powerful, the British resistance will face an even greater challenge. Garant moves along, the palisade checking defenses, offering quiet words of encouragement. He wears a mail shirt, a precious heirloom likely passed down through generations. At his side hangs a sword, of good steel, another rare treasure in this world where quality metalwork is increasingly scarce. Stand firm, he tells the defenders. Remember your training. Together we are stronger than any raiding party. The Saxon force halts just beyond effective bowshot from the palisade. One figure steps forward, torch held high. Men of Camlan. The figure calls out in accented British. I am Osric of the East Saxons. I bring terms from my lord. Garant steps onto the fighting platform that runs inside the palisade, visible above the sharpened logs. What terms would raiders offer except our deaths? He calls back, his voice steady. Not raiders, Osric replies. Settlers. These lands will be Saxon by summers. And But my lord is merciful. Acknowledge his rule, pay tribute, and you may remain. A murmur passes through the defenders. The audacity of the demand is shocking. Not just a raid for supplies, but a declaration of conquest. These lands have been British since before Rome. Garant answers. They will remain so long after your bones are. Dust. Osric's laugh carries across the distance. Bold words. We'll see if you're... Arthur saves you when we return in force. He steps back, rejoining his men. Consider our offer. We'll be back at the next full moon. Be ready with your answer or your weapons. The Saxon band retreats, their torches receding into the darkness. They made no attempt to attack. This was a message, a psychological tactic meant to instill fear and doubt. And it works. As the immediate danger passes, worried conversations break out along the palisade. How did they know about Arthur's call for alliance? They must have spies, informants, or they intercepted the messenger on his way here. If they're offering terms now, they must be planning something bigger. Garant called for silence. Back to your homes. Double the night watch. We'll discuss this in the morning council. As the defenders disperse, Merdin approaches Garant, his face grave in the torchlight. This changes things, he says quietly, though you're close enough to hear. The Saxons are coordinating their efforts, responding to Arthur's alliance with one of their own. Garant nods grimly. All the more reason to accept Arthur's call. He turns to you. Bedwyr, you'll leave at first light with the other chosen men. The messenger knows the safest routes west. Tell Arthur what happened here. Tonight, you nod, understanding the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a random raid, but the first move in a larger strategy. The struggle for Britain is intensifying, moving from isolated skirmishes to something approaching organized warfare. As you help bar the settlement gates of night, you can't help but reflect on how different this is from the Arthurian legends of later centuries. No shining knights, no chivalric codes, no ornate castles, just communities of people fighting for survival. Leaders try and preserve what remains of civilization and the first stirrings of what might become a unified resistance. The historical Arthur, if the war leader you'll soon meet is indeed the basis for. The legends emerged not in a golden age, but in one of Britain's darkest. Ours, when the last vestiges of Roman order were fading and a new world was painfully being born. You return to the storehouse to let the women and children know the danger has passed. As they file out, return to their homes, Rian catches your arm. Is it true? She asks. You're leaving tomorrow? Yes, you confirm. Garant wants us to reach Arthur as quickly as possible. She looks like she wants to say more, but simply nods. May your God protect you, she says finally, whichever one you favor. It's a common blessing in this world of religious transition, acknowledging the mixture of Christian and pagan beliefs. That characterizes the era. Later, as you prepare for sleep in your sisters' dwelling, gathering what few possessions you'll take on the journey, she watches with worried eyes. Merdin says you'll return. She offers, folding a spare tunic for your travel pack. He's seen it in the smoke. You're not sure whether to find this comforting or concerning. Merdin straddles a line between Christian healer and pagan seer, using whatever methods work to serve the community. His seeing in the smoke might be genuine second sight, clever observation of patterns, or simply words of comfort for a worried sister. I'll return, you promise, hoping it's true. Outside, the night is quiet again, but there's a new tension in the air. The Saxon message has changed something fundamental. This is no longer just about isolated raids, but about the future of Britain itself, whether it will remain culturally British or become a Saxon land. Somewhere to the west, a war leader named Arthur is trying to rally the fragmented British kingdoms against this threat. Tomorrow, you'll begin the journey to join him, to see for yourself whether he's a figure of later legend or simply another warlord, making grand claims in desperate times. As you settle onto your sleeping platform, body aching from the day's labor and the evening's alarm, you wonder about the real Arthur. Did he have a sword called Excalibur? Was there a Guinevere, a Lancelot, a Merlin? Or were these characters added centuries later romantic embellishments to a much harsher historical reality? Sleep comes quickly, as it tends to, after days of physical exertion. But your dreams are troubled, mixing images from your other life with scenes of battle, of Saxons approaching Camlan's walls, of a man in Roman-style armor rallying British warriors against the invaders. When you wake before dawn, these dreams are already fading, replaced by the immediate concerns of the journey ahead. 20 men from Camlan will be traveling west to join Arthur's forces, leaving behind their families, their fields, their daily lives to become part of something larger than their small settlement. This is how armies formed in post-Roman Britain, not through formal conscription or professional military service, but through networks of obligation, alliance, and necessity. Men who normally spent their days farming or crafting, becoming warriors when the situation demanded it. As you gather your few possessions, a spare tunic, a small knife, a wooden cup, you wonder whether you'll be part of history, whether the journey you're beginning will someday be transformed into legend. Your actual experience is unrecognizable beneath layers of romantic embellishment. Outside, the eastern sky is just beginning to lighten. Birds are starting their morning chorus. The settlement is quiet, most still sleeping after the alarm of the previous night. But at the main gate, men are already gathering. The 20 chosen to join Arthur's forces. The messenger who will guide you west, and Garant, who will see you off. It's time to leave the relative safety of Camlan and venture into the wider world of post-Roman Britain, a world of danger and opportunity, of crumbling Roman ruins and emerging British kingdoms, of Saxon expansion and British resistance, a world where history is becoming legend before your eyes. Dawn creeps over the eastern horizon as your group assembles at Camlan's gate. The 20 chosen men stand awkwardly with their small bundles of possessions and weapons. Most have never traveled more than a day's journey from the settlement. Remember, you represent Camlan. Garant tells you, his breath visible in the cool morning air. Show Arthur that our people maintain Roman discipline. Roman discipline is more aspiration than reality these days, but nobody contradicts him. Merdin approaches you as the others say their goodbyes. He presses something into your hand, a small leather pouch for fever and wounds, he says quietly. The journey west isn't safe. You pocket the medicine, noting how light it is. Herbs are precious resources gathered with, knowledge passed down through generations. This represents a significant gift. And Bedwyr, Merdin adds, his voice dropping further. When you meet Arthur, watch, listen. The stories men tell about themselves reveal much. Before you can ask what he means, the messenger from Arthur signals it's time to leave. With minimal ceremony, your group files through the gate and onto the muddy track beyond. A few family members watch from the palisade, but most are already at their daily tasks. Life continues. Regardless of politics and alliances, the journey begins in silence. Each man lost in his thoughts. Your path follows old Roman roads where possible. Once, magnificent highways of stone and gravel, now deteriorating from neglect. Trees grow through cracks in the paving stones. Sections have been pillaged for building material. Still, they remain the best routes through the British landscape. By midday, you've settled into a steady rhythm of walking. The messenger, Dresden, he's called, sets a pace that covers ground efficiently without exhausting the group. He's clearly made This journey many times. How long to Arthur's stronghold? Someone asked during a brief rest. For days if the weather holds. Dresden. Longer if the rivers are high from spring rains. For days of walking through territory that grows increasingly unfamiliar, where each settlement might be friendly or hostile, where Saxon raiding parties could appear without warning. Your hand instinctively checks the spear strapped to your back, a simple weapon within. Iron tip forged by your sister's husband, the shaft of smooth ash wood. The first night you camp in the ruins of a Roman roadside station, once a place where imperial messengers could change horses and rest, now just crumbling, stone walls providing minimal shelter from the wind. As darkness falls, watches are organized. No one sleeps deeply, each man startling at unfamiliar sounds. The second day brings rain, a persistent chilling drizzle that seeps through woolen cloaks and into boots. This is the reality of travel in post-Roman Britain. No comfortable inns along the road, no dry carriages, just trudging through mud while water trickles down your neck. Saxons won't be raiding in this weather, one of the men comments, trying to find the bright side. Too wet for bowstrings, unless they're using the Roman composite bows and other counters. Those work in rain. My grandfather had one, took it from a dead auxiliary. These snippets of conversation reveal how knowledge from the Roman era persists but is fragmenting, becoming uncertain. What was common technical information a century ago is now passed down as half-remembered stories, often garbled. In the retelling, near midday, your group encounters another party on the road, merchants with a small cart pulled by a bony mule. Dresden approaches them cautiously, hand on his sword, but the meeting proves friendly. The merchants are British, traveling between settlements selling small luxuries, salt, spices, needles, thread, items that local communities can't produce themselves. They offer news in exchange for shelter under your group's makeshift rain covers. Arthur gathered 500 men last month, one merchant says, chewing on a piece of dried meat, defeated a Saxon band near the old lead mines, took their weapons, sent them back east with nothing but their breeches. He grins. Word is their leader had to explain to his people why. His warriors came home naked. This brings appreciative chuckles from your group. Small victories matter in these times. He's fortifying Cadbury Hill. The merchant continues, rebuilding the old ramparts, digging new ditches. They say he has men trained in Roman siegecraft. And the Saxons Dresden asks, what news? From the east? The merchant's face grows serious. They've taken another settlement near Aquisulis, Bath they call it now. Killed the men enslaved. The women and children he spits into the mud. But they're not just raiders anymore. They're bringing families, livestock, setting up kingdoms. This confirms what you learned at Camlan. The nature of the Saxon presence is changing from raiding to permanent settlement. The stakes are growing higher with each season. As the rain finally eases, your group continues westward. The landscape changes subtly. More hills, fewer sections of Roman road, more stretches of muddy track. The settlements you pass become smaller, more isolated. Some greet your armed band with suspicion, until Dresden explains your purpose. The third day brings you to a river, crossing. In Roman times, there would have been a bridge here. Indeed, you can see the stone foundations on either bank, but the wooden spans are long gone, either collapsed from neglect or deliberately destroyed during some forgotten conflict. We'll have to ford it, Dresden announces, studying the water level. It's higher than last month, but still passable if we're careful. Crossing the cold river proves challenging. The water reaches your chest at the deepest point, the current tugging at your legs, threatening to sweep you downstream. Everyone ties their possessions high, on their bodies to keep them dry. One man loses his footing and is nearly lost before others grab him and drag him to safety. This is travel in Arthur's Britain. Every journey a small adventure, every mile potentially dangerous. Basic infrastructure crumbling away year by year. That night you reach a settlement, larger than Camlan, protected by earthen banks topped with a wooden palisade. The gates are barred when you arrive. The guard suspicious of 20 armed men appearing at dusk. We come from Camlan, headed to join Arthur's forces. Dresden calls up to the watchman. We seek shelter for the night. After some discussion, you're allowed inside. The settlement, Treverines they call it, is built partly within the ruins of an old Roman fort. Stone buildings stand alongside wooden structures, the old and new, intermingled in the typical fashion of post-Roman Britain. The local leader, a weathered man named Merdin, offers basic hospitality, a roof over your heads in the community hall, a simple meal of stew and bread, ale to wash it down. In return, he wants news. What word? From the east? He asks Dresden. The traders say Saxons are pushing farther, west each season. Your group shares what you know. The confrontation at Camlan, rumors of Saxon settlement rather than just raiding, the growing coordination among Saxon bands. Merdin listens grimly, occasionally, asking for clarification. And this Arthur, he says finally, you truly believe he can unite the British kingdoms against the Saxon advance? Dresden straightens, clearly proud to serve as Arthur's messenger. He's won 3 battles already. He trains his men in Roman tactics, shield wall coordinated, movement proper scouting. The Saxons have numbers, but they fight as individuals, not as units. Merdin looks unconvinced. I've heard such claims before. Warlords rise and fall like summer wheat. What makes this one different? He doesn't seek to rule over other British leaders, Dresden explains, only to coordinate our efforts against a common threat. Each kingdom keeps its own identity, its own lands, but together we can push back the Saxon advance. The conversation continues late, into the evening with arguments for and against joining Arthur's alliance. Some, in Treverinoy, favor isolation, focusing on their own defenses, avoiding larger conflicts. Others see the wisdom in collective action. It's a debate happening in settlements across Western Britain. That night, sleeping on the floor of Treverinoy's hall, you overhear 2 men from your group talking quietly. Do you think he's real? One asks. This Arthur, as grand as the messenger, claims. My cousin fought with him at the battle near the old lead mines. The other replies, says he's no god, just a man, but a man who knows how to lead, how to make warriors work together. Pause. Says he has a sword of remarkable craftsmanship, Spanish steel, supposedly, not pulled from a stone. Then the first man chuckles. Only stone swords come, from the ones with ore in them, you fool. These conversations, the mixing of fact and emerging legend, of practical concerns and hopeful myths, are how the Arthurian story is forming in real time, growing with each retelling, each embellishment. The 4th day of travel brings you into hillier country. The Roman roads are almost entirely gone here, replaced by winding tracks that follow the natural contours of the land. You pass ancient standing stones, hill forts built long before Rome came to Britain. Sacred springs now adorned with Christian crosses alongside older symbols. This is older Britain. The landscape less touched by Roman influence, more connected to ancient traditions. The settlements are smaller, built of stone rather than wood. They're circular houses, reflecting pre-Roman building styles that never fully disappeared in the western regions. By late afternoon, Dresden points to a hill rising above the surrounding landscape. Cadbury, he says with evident pride, Arthur's stronghold. The hill is impressive, steep-sided with a flattened top, clearly defensible. Even from a distance, you can see activity on its summit, the movement of people, smoke from fires, the glint of weapons. The hill fort that crowns it is ancient, dating back centuries before the Romans, but now repurposed for a new age of conflict. As you approach, you pass through fields, where men and women are working, planting crops, tending livestock. Any military force needs food, and Arthur clearly understands this fundamental requirement. Beyond the fields, a small settlement has grown at the hill's base. Crafts, people supporting the warriors above, families who have sought protection, traders taking advantage of the concentration of people. The path up the hill is steep, deliberately so for defensive purposes. Your group climbs in single file, legs burning from the exertion after 4 days of travel. Near the top, you encounter the first line of defenses, a ditch and bank system recently rebuilt and expanded with a wooden palisade atop the bank. Guards stop your party, more disciplined than those you've encountered at other settlements. They wear similar clothing, not uniforms exactly, but a deliberate attempt at consistency. Each has a shield painted with the same design, a red dragon on a green field, dressed and identifies himself and your group. After a brief inspection, you're allowed to pass through the gate in the palisade. Inside, Cadbury Hill Fort is a hive of activity. What might have been an empty ceremonial center in earlier times has been transformed into a military camp and administrative headquarters. Wooden buildings cluster along laid-out streets, an attempt to impose Roman order on the ancient British site. Men train in an open area practicing shield wall formations under the direction of a scarred veteran who shouts commands in a mixture of British and Latin military terminology. Impressive, one of your group murmurs. And you have to agree, this is the most organized military operation you've seen in this world. A deliberate attempt to recapture Roman efficiency rather than the ad hoc defense typical of most British settlements. Dresden leads you to a large roundhouse near the center of the fort. Unlike the rectangular Roman-style buildings that dominate the settlement, this structure follows the ancient British tradition, circular with a conical thatched roof and a single central post supporting the roof beams, but it's larger than typical. Examples, clearly built to accommodate gatherings. Wait here, Dresden instructs. I'll inform Arthur of your arrival. While you wait, your group watches the activity around. You, warriors from different British kingdoms, are identifiable by their distinctive clothing styles, weapons, and the way they wear their hair. Some have adapted Roman military equipment, mail shirts, helmets, rectangular, shields. Others maintain traditional British gear, round shields, short, spears, minimal armor. The mix reflects the hybrid nature of post-Roman British culture, neither fully Roman nor fully reverting to pre-Roman ways. A man approaches your group tall, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He wears a simple wool tunic, and trousers distinguished only by the quality of the weaving, and a cloak pin of unusual craftsmanship. At his waist hangs a sword in a plain leather scabbard. The men from Camlan, he says, his voice carrying natural authority. Welcome to Cadbury. I am Bedwyr, Arthur's shield-bearer. The name sends a jolt through you. Bedwyr, one of Arthur's knights in later legend. Here, a flesh-and-blood man with none of the romantic trappings of medieval tales. His hands are callous, his face weathered by sun and wind, his eyes constantly scanning for potential threats. This is a warrior, not a chivalric knight. Arthur will see you tomorrow. Bedwyr continues. Tonight you'll rest from your journey. Food and quarters have been arranged. He gestures to a younger man nearby. Garant will show you where to store your weapons and where you'll sleep. The practical concerns of military life. No grand ceremonies, no elaborate welcomes. just the efficient processing of new resources into a military operation. This Arthur runs a disciplined operation. Garant, a teenager with serious expression, leads your group to a long rectangular building clearly inspired by Roman barracks. Inside, sleeping platforms line the walls with central aisle and fire pit spaced along its length for warmth. Meals are at dawn and dusk, Garant explains. Training begins tomorrow after morning meal. Weapons are stored in the armory except during training or when on duty. He recites these instructions as if he's given them many times before. Latrines are beyond the east wall. Anyone fouling the ground elsewhere answers to Kai. Who's Kai? One of your group asks. Arthur's second, Garant replies with a hint of awe. You don't want to meet him for disciplinary reasons. Another name from legend, Kai, Arthur's foster brother. In some versions of the story here, apparently a stern enforcer of military discipline. After storing your weapons in the designated armory, a well-guarded structure with a Roman-style tile roof, one of the few in the settlement, your group is led to a cooking area where a simple but filling meal is provided. Barley porridge, bread, some salted meat, weak ale, basic military rations, but more consistent than what many settlements can provide. As you eat, you observe the other warriors at Cadbury. There must be over 200 men here from various parts of Western Britain. They cluster in groups, based on their origins, speaking different dialects of British, occasionally using Latin terms for concepts that have no native equivalent. A man sits beside you, older than most, with iron gray hair and a prominent scar across his right cheek. Camlan, he says, tearing a piece of bread. Long journey. You gnawed, mouth full of porridge. I'm from Venta Icenorum. He continues. Joined Arthur's first war. Banned 2 summers ago after he defeated a Saxon force near the old lead mines. He studies you. You have the look of someone who's fought before. You admit, against raiders mostly. He nods, appreciatively. That's good. Arthur needs men with experience. Too many farm boys who've never held a spear before they arrive here. He extends a hand. Bors, another legendary name. Another real man, nothing like his romanticized counterpart. This Bors has none of the courtly manners later tales would attribute to him. Just a veteran warrior, who's seen enough combat to recognize others of his kind. Bedwyr, you reply, clasping his forearm in greeting. Bedwyr, he repeats, nodding. Good. Strong name. British, not Roman. Arthur likes that. Says, we're fighting for Britain, not the ghost of Rome. He leans closer. Though between us, he uses more Roman tactics than he admits. This casual conversation reveals something important about Arthur's approach. Balancing British identity with Roman military methods, drawing on the strengths of both traditions. Is he what they say? You ask carefully. A leader who can unite the kingdoms. Bors considers this, chewing thoughtfully. He's a man, not a god. He bleeds when cut, gets angry, makes mistakes. He pauses. But men follow him, not just for pay or protection, but because he makes them believe Britain can stand against the Saxon tide. Another pause. That's rare these days. After the meal, with daylight fading, you have time to explore Cadbury Hill Fort before sleep. The summit offers a commanding view of the surrounding countryside, miles of visibility in all directions, perfect for spotting approaching forces. No wonder Arthur chose this location for his headquarters. The defenses are impressive. Multiple lines of ditches, and banks reinforced with wooden palisades. In places you can see where ancient defensive works have been cleared and rebuilt, connecting the distant past with present necessity. At the highest point of the hill stands a structure different from the others, rectangular, built of salvaged Roman stone with a tiled roof, Guards stand at its entrance, more formally equipped than those at the outer defenses. This must be Arthur's headquarters. As you watch, a man emerges from the building accompanied by two others. Even at a distance, something about his bearing identifies him as the leader. He gestures toward the western defenses, clearly discussing improvements or strategies. The others listen attentively, occasionally offering comments that he appears to consider seriously. Is this Arthur, the historical figure, behind the legendary king? From this distance, he seems ordinary enough. A man in the prime of life, dressed like his warriors, but with slightly better quality clothing, armed but not ostentatiously so. Nothing to suggest the magical king of later romantic tales. A bell sounds, a signal for the changing of guards and the end of day's activities. Men begin moving toward their assigned quarters. Fires are banked, voices lower. The military discipline is evident in how smoothly this transition occurs. You return to the barracks building assigned to your group, finding a place on one of the sleeping platforms. The straw mattress is thin, the woolen blanket rough, but after 4 days of travel, any horizontal surface seems luxurious. Around you, men from Camlan discuss in low voices what they've observed, what tomorrow might bring. Some are impressed by the organization at Cadbury, others skeptical about whether it can truly make a difference against the Saxon advance. Did you see the armory? One whispers excitedly. Roman spears, mail, shirts, even some helmets. Better equipment than anything at Camlan. Equipment doesn't win battles. Another counters. Men do. And I haven't seen these warriors tested yet. Boris says they've won 3 battles already. Boris could be lying or mistaken, or exaggerating. The skepticism is natural in a world where grand claims often prove hollow, where leaders rise and fall rapidly, where hope frequently leads to disappointment. As conversation dies down and men settle into sleep, you find yourself thinking about what tomorrow will bring. Will you meet Arthur face to face? Will he live up to Dresden's descriptions? And what role will you play in this attempt to preserve British culture against Saxon expansion? These questions follow you into dreams. Strained, fragmented visions mixing your modern knowledge with your current reality. You see Saxon warriors with modern weapons, Roman soldiers with cell phones, Arthur seated at a round conference table with maps and strategy documents. You wake before dawn to the sound of a horn, the signal for the day to begin at Cadbury. Around you, men grumble and rise, shaking off sleep, preparing for whatever this day will bring. Outside, the first hint of light shows in the eastern sky. Fires are being lit. The smell of cooking porridge fills the air. Men move with purpose toward their morning duties. This is Arthur's Britain. Organized, disciplined, purposeful, a deliberate attempt to recapture something of Rome's efficiency, while defending what remains of British identity. And somewhere in the large stone building at the hill's summit, Arthur himself is likely already awake, planning the defense of Western Britain against the inexorable Saxon advance. The man behind the legend, stripped of later romantic embellishments, facing the harsh realities of a world in transition. After a breakfast identical to last night's dinner, porridge, bread, weak ale, Bedwyr appears at your barracks. Arthur will see the men from Camlan now. He announces, this is it, the moment you'll meet the historical Arthur, the war leader who would later be transformed into the legendary king. What will he be like? How will he compare to the mythical figure of later tales? As your group follows Bedwyr toward the stone building at the hill center, you notice the camp is fully active now. Men train in formation on the open ground. Craftsmen repair weapons and armor. Messengers come and go on horseback. This is not just a military camp, but the administrative center of Arthur's alliance, the closest thing post-Roman Britain has to a functioning government. The stone building, Arthur's headquarters, proves to be built on the foundation of a Roman structure, perhaps a temple or administrative building that once stood on this hilltop. The walls incorporate salvaged Roman stonework alongside rougher local stone. Another example of how this world bridges the Roman past and the emerging medieval future. Inside, the space is divided into several rooms. Bedwyr leads you to the largest, a hall with a table dominated by maps weighted down with stones. Light enters through windows covered with oil parchment rather than glass, a luxury unavailable in post-Roman Britain, except to salvaged items from abandoned villas. At the center of the room stands a man studying the maps intently, occasionally moving stone, markers representing troop positions. He looks up as your group enters. The men from Camlan, Bedwyr announces. The man straightens and turns to face you. This, then, is Arthur, the historical figure behind the legendary king. Ordinariness. He's a medium height and solid build, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair, cut short in the Roman military style, and a closely trimmed beard. He wears a simple woolen tunic and trousers with a cloak of slightly better quality fastened at the shoulder with a bronze pin. The only obvious sign of status is the sword at his waist, not a jeweled fantasy weapon, but a practical blade of excellent craftsmanship, its pommel worn, smooth from years of use. His eyes are his most striking feature, dark, intelligent, and constantly assessing, missing nothing as they scan your group. Welcome to Cadbury, he says, his voice steady and clear. Dresden speaks highly of Garant and the men of Camlan. His accent is interesting, primarily British, but with traces of Latin pronunciation, suggesting an education, more formal than most receive in these times. Garant sends his regards. Your group's unofficial leader, a farmer named Maddock, responds, and 20 spears to support your alliance. Arthur nods appreciatively. 20 good men matter more than 100 untrained boys. He moves around the table toward your group. You've traveled far. Dresden says you encountered Saxon scouts near your settlement. Maddock explains the confrontation at Camlan, the Saxon force that delivered terms rather than attacking. The deadline of the next full moon, the mention of Arthur's name. Arthur listens carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. There's nothing magical or mystical about him. Occasionally asking clarifying questions. They know we're uniting, he says when Maddock finishes. That's why they're becoming more organized themselves. For generations, they've raided and retreated. Now they want permanent settlements, kingdoms of their own. He returns to the map table. Show me exactly where this happened. Maddock points to the location of Camlan on the map. Arthur places a small stone marker there, adding it to a pattern of similar markers across the map of Western Britain. The picture that emerges is concerning. A line of Saxon pressure, pushing steadily westward with particular concentration along old Roman roads and river valleys. They're coordinating their efforts, Arthur explains. No longer individual bands raiding independently, but groups working together under regional leaders. He points to several locations. We've had similar reports from settlements here, and here. Always the same. Pattern. Demands for submission. Threats of return in force. Testing our defenses. A voice says from the doorway. Learning our strengths, our weaknesses. The man who enters is older than Arthur by perhaps a decade, with graying hair, and the weathered face of someone who has spent a lifetime in military campaigns. He moves with a slight limp, but carries himself with unmistakable authority. Kai, Arthur acknowledges the men from Camlan. Kai, the historical basis for K and later legends, studies your group with the critical eye of a veteran assessing new recruits. His gaze lingers briefly on you, then moves on. 20? He asks. 20? Arthur confirms. Kai makes a non-committal sound. Better than. Nothing. Put them with boars for training. They'll need to learn our signals, our formations. The casual discussion of your group as military resources might be offensive in another context. But here, it's simply practical. This is Arthur's Britain, a world where survival depends on effective defense, where every settlement contributes what it can to the collective effort. You'll begin training tomorrow. Arthur tells your group, today, rest and familiarize yourselves with Cadbury. Bedwyr will show you the camp. He turns back to the map, already refocused on the larger strategic picture. It's a brief meeting. No elaborate court ceremony. No knights kneeling before their king. Just the efficient introduction of new resources into a military operation. The historical Arthur is a practical leader concerned with immediate threats, not the romantic figure of later medieval tales. As Bedwyr leads you out, you glance back to see Arthur and Kai deep in discussion over the map, moving markers, considering options. The fate of Western Britain rests on their military judgment, their ability to unite traditionally fractious kingdoms against a Saxon advance. Outside, the late morning sun has burned away the mist that covered the land surrounding Cadbury Hill. From this elevation, you can see for miles a patchwork of fields, forests, and small settlements stretching to the horizon, the land that Arthur is fighting to defend. Bedwyr conducts a thorough tour of the hill fort, showing your group the training areas, the armory, the workshops where weapons and equipment are repaired, the stables for the few precious horses, the storage buildings for food and supplies. Everything is organized with military efficiency, a deliberate attempt to recapture Roman order in a post-Roman world. Most men train with their own weapons, Bedwyr explains, but we provide shields of standard size for shield wall formations. Arthur believes in Roman tactics, fighting as units rather than individuals. This emphasis on discipline and coordination is what sets Arthur's forces apart from both other British war bands and Saxon raiders. He's preserving and adapting Roman military knowledge that might otherwise be lost as generations pass. The tour ends near midday at the training ground where Boris, the veteran you met yesterday, is instructing a group of men in shield wall techniques. He notices your arrival and calls for a break, approaching with a slight nod of recognition. The man from Camlan, Bedwyr tells him. Kai says they're to train with your unit. Boris studies your group with a professional eye. Good. We need more experienced men. He turns to your group. Rest a day. Tomorrow at dawn, report here with your weapons. We'll see what you know and what you need to learn. As Bedwyr leads you back toward your assigned barracks, you notice a structure set slightly apart from the others. A small building of stone and timber with smoke rising from a hole in its roof. A man sits outside grinding something in a mortar. The healer's quarters, Bedwyr explains. Following your gaze, Taliesin, he tends to wounds, prepares medicines. He lowers his voice slightly. Some say he has other gifts as well. Taliesin, the name Merdin mentioned, the man you were supposed to seek out. In later Welsh legend, a poet with supernatural powers, but here apparently a healer with a reputation for unusual abilities. Is he a Christian? Someone in your group asks. Bedwyr shrugs. He honors Christ, but knows the old ways, too. Arthur cares more for results than how they're achieved. This pragmatic approach to religion reflects the reality of post-Roman Britain, officially Christian, but with older beliefs persisting, especially in matters of healing and protection. Most people hedge their bets, honoring both the Christ God and older deities just to be safe. You make a mental note to find a way to speak with Taliesin privately. Merdin clearly believed he would have insight into your strange dreams, your sense of displacement in this world. The Remainder of the day passes in relative leisure, a welcome change after 4 days of travel. Some men from your group nap in the barracks. Others explore Cadbury. Further, a few help with camp tasks to make a good impression. You use the time to observe the operation more carefully, trying to understand the historical reality behind the Arthurian legends. What emerges is a picture very different from the romantic medieval tales. Arthur is a military leader attempting to unite the fragmented British kingdoms against Saxon expansion. His knights are battle-hardened warriors who fight with spears and shields, not lances and heraldry. His round table is a map table where strategy is discussed among equals. His Camelot is a hill fort combining ancient British defenses with Roman organizational principles. And yet, you can see how these practical realities might evolve into later legends. Arthur's emphasis on all leaders having equal voice in councils could become the round table symbolic equality. His core trusted warriors, Bedwyr, Kai, Bors, and others could transform into the knights of the round table. His military headquarters atop Cadbury Hill could grow in the telling into the magnificent Camelot. As evening approaches, cooking fires are lit throughout the camp. The meal is similar to breakfast and last night's dinner, simple but filling, designed to fuel warriors rather than please palates. But there's a different atmosphere tonight, less rushed, more communal. After eating, men gather in groups, sharing stories, playing simple games with dice and stones, maintaining weapons and equipment. You find yourself seated near a fire with several others from Camlan and a few of Bors's unit who have made an effort to welcome the newcomers. First time away from home. A warrior named Garant asks one of the younger men from Camlan. The young man, barely more than a boy, nods nervously. Never been more than half a day's walk from our settlement. Garant smiles sympathetically. Same for me when I joined. From a small place near what used to be Corinium. Couldn't sleep for days. Everything's so strange. He gestures around the camp. Now this feels more like home than my village did. This is another reality of Arthur's Britain. Communities forming around military necessity rather than traditional family or tribal bonds. Men from different settlements, different backgrounds, united by common purpose and shared experience. Is it true Arthur was trained by Ambrosius Aurelianus himself? Someone asks. An older warrior nods. Served under him as a young man. Learned Roman. Tactics, leadership, strategy. Ambrosius was the last of the true Romano-British commanders, born to a family that remembered what it meant to be both Roman and British. They say Arthur's sword was forged from a meteorite. Another adds, metal from the heavens, harder than any earthly steel nonsense. Bors cuts in, joining your circle. It's Spanish steel from the old imperial forges. His father acquired it during service to Ambrosius. He sits heavily, stretching his bad leg toward the fire. No need for fairy stories. The truth is impressive enough. But you can see how such fairy stories begin. An exceptional sword becomes magical. A military education under a famous commander becomes tutelage by a wizard. A hill fort headquarters becomes a magnificent castle. The reality transforms through repeated tellings, each narrator adding embellishments to impress listeners. As darkness deepens, a different kind of gathering forms near the central area of the camp. A man sits with a small harp, not the large floor harp of later medieval courts, but a simple handheld instrument. Around him, warriors gather, conversations quieting in anticipation. Taliesin, Garant whispers to you. When he plays, even Arthur comes to listen. So this is Taliesin, not just a healer, but a bard as well. The historical basis for the legendary poet of Welsh tradition. He appears older than most men in the camp with white hair and beard, but his fingers move nimbly across the harp strings as he begins to play. The music is haunting, simple by later standards, but powerful in its raw emotion. When Taliesin begins to sing, his voice carries clearly through the evening air. The language is British with occasional Latin phrases, the melody ancient. Even without understanding all the words, you feel their impact, a lament for what has been lost, a hope for what might yet be preserved. Warriors listen in respectful silence, many with closed eyes, transported by the music to other times, other places. You notice Arthur himself standing at the edge of the gathering, his face thoughtful in the firelight. This is another aspect of life in Arthur's Britain, the importance of oral tradition, of music and poetry in maintaining cultural identity when written records are increasingly rare. Taliesin isn't just entertaining. He's preserving stories, history, cultural memory that might otherwise be lost. When the song ends, there's a moment of complete silence before conversations resume, more subdued than before. Taliesin plays a few more pieces, some sad, some rousing, one that brings laughter with what must be humorous lyrics, judging by the reactions. As the gathering begins to disperse, men returning to their quarters for the night, you see your opportunity. Following Merdin's instructions, you approach Taliesin as he carefully wraps his harp in a protective cloth. "That was beautiful," you say simply. He looks up, studying you with keen eyes. "You're new. From Camlan." "Yes." You nod. Surprise, he's already aware of your origin. "Merdin's settlement," he says with a slight smile. "How is the old fox?" He sends greetings. You reply, and asks me to speak with you. Taliesin's expression shifts subtly, becoming more focused. Did he know about what matter? You glance around, aware that this isn't a conversation for public hearing. "Dreams," you say quietly. "Visions of another world." Understanding dawns in his eyes. He nods slightly. "Come to my quarters tomorrow after evening meal. We'll speak then." He rises, harp cradled carefully in his arms. "Rest well, Bedwyr of Camlan. Tomorrow brings new challenges." He knows your name, though you didn't give it. Perhaps Merdin sent messages ahead. Or perhaps Taliesin has other ways of knowing things, ways that might later be described as magical in the evolving Arthurian legends. As you return to your assigned barracks, the camp settles for the night. Guards take their positions on the walls. Fires are banked to coals. Voices lower and eventually fall silent. Military discipline maintains order even in these quiet hours. Lying on your sleeping platform, you reflect on what you've seen today. The historical Arthur bears little resemblance to the legendary king of medieval romances. There's no Guinevere mention, no Lancelot, no magical sword pulled from a stone. Just a capable war leader trying to preserve something of Romano-British civilization against Saxon expansion. And yet the seeds of the later legends are visible everywhere in Arthur's exceptional leadership and his corps of trusted warriors in his attempts to unite traditionally fractious kingdoms against a common threat. You're witnessing the raw material of myth, before generations of storytellers transform it into familiar Arthurian cycle. Sleep comes easily after the day's mental and physical exertions, but your dreams are troubled, shifting between your modern knowledge and your current reality, between memories of comfort and awareness of danger. You see Saxon warriors advancing toward Camlan's walls, Arthur's forces marching to intercept them. Battles were the future. Of Britain hangs in the balance. You wake suddenly in the darkness, unsure. What disturbed your sleep? Around you, the other men from Camlan sleep deeply, exhausted from travel and new experiences. Outside, you can hear the quiet movement of the night watch, the occasional soft challenge as guards identify each other. Unable to return to sleep immediately, you rise quietly and move to the barracks entrance. The night air is cool, but not uncomfortable. Above, stars blanket the sky in numbers. Unimaginable in your dream world of light pollution, the Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a road of light. From this vantage point, you can see most of Cadbury Hill Fort, darkened buildings, the glow of watchfires along the walls, the larger structure of Arthur's headquarters, where a single light still burns. Is he still awake? Studying maps, planning strategies? The weight of responsibility he carries must make rest difficult. Movement catches your eye. A figure walking alone along the western wall, pausing occasionally to speak with guards, even at a distance. Something about his bearing identifies him as Arthur, checking defenses personally rather than delegating, ensuring his men remain vigilant, even in the quiet hours. This is leadership in Arthur's Britain. Practical, hands-on, concern with details. Not the remote, regal figure of later legends, but a commander who shares the hardships of his men, who understands that survival depends on constant vigilance. As you watch, Arthur completes a circuit of the defenses and returns toward his quarters. The light there extinguishes shortly after. Even legendary leaders need sleep. You return to your sleeping platform, more settled now. Tomorrow will bring new experiences. Training with Bors's unit, learning Arthur's military systems, and a promised conversation with Taliesin about your strange dreams. This is your life now, a warrior in Arthur's forces, part of the historical reality that will someday be transformed into enduring legend. The once and future king, not as later centuries would imagine him, but as he might truly have been, a man fighting against the tide of history, trying to preserve what remains of civilization in a world where the old order has collapsed and a new one has yet to fully emerge. As sleeper claims you, you wonder how this story ends. Not the romantic tale of later medieval literature, but the historical reality you're experiencing. Will Arthur succeed in uniting the British kingdoms? Will he push back the Saxon advance? Or is he fighting a losing battle against forces too powerful to resist? History suggests the latter, that Saxon expansion would continue despite British resistance, that the Romano-British culture would gradually be displaced, surviving primarily in the western regions that would become Wales and Cornwall. But perhaps this Arthur, the historical figure behind the legend, will achieve more than recorded history suggests. Or perhaps his greatest victory will be not military success, but inspiring a legend that endures for centuries after his time, a symbol of hope, of resistance against overwhelming odds, of holding on to civilization when darkness threatens to engulf it. These thoughts follow you into dreams once more, dreams of round tables and shining nights, mingle with the harsher realities of shield walls and survival in post-Roman Britain. The legend forming even as you live the history that inspires it. Morning comes with the sound of horns, echoing across Cadbury Hill Fort. The military day begins before dawn, a practice dating back to Roman times, maximizing daylight hours for training and preparation. You rise with the others, moving to the now familiar routine of a quick breakfast before, reporting to the training ground where Bors waits, already assessing the newcomers with a critical eye. 20 men. From Camlan, he announces to his existing unit, some with experience, against raiders. They'll join us for shield wall training. He turns to your group. Show me what you know. Form A. Line. Shields overlapping. Your group complies, arranging yourselves as Garant, taught back at Camlan. The shields, simple wooden rounds with iron bosses locked together in a defensive wall. It's a basic formation, one that British warriors have used since before Roman times. Bors walks along the line, making small corrections, adjusting a stance. Here, the angle of a shield there. His attention to detail reveals the difference between survival-level training at settlements like Camlan and the more disciplined approach at Arthur's headquarters. Not bad, he grudgingly admits, but not good enough against organized Saxon forces. He calls to his existing unit. Show them how it's done. His men form a perfect shield wall, not just a line, but a coordinated unit where each warrior knows exactly how his position relates to others, where shields overlap precisely, where every spear is positioned for maximum effectiveness. That's the difference between warriors and soldiers. Boris explains warriors fight as individuals. Soldiers fight as parts of a whole. Arthur builds soldiers. The morning passes in exhausting drills, forming the wall, advancing in, formation, responding commands, maintaining discipline, even when simulated attacks test your resolve. By midday, your arms ache from holding shields. Your legs burn from maintaining proper stance, and sweat soaks your woolen tunic despite the cool spring. Air. Better, Boris acknowledges as he finally calls for a break. Not good, but better. This grudging praise means more coming from him than flowery. Compliments would from others. You've learned more about effective combat in one morning than in months of occasional training at Camlan. During the midday meal, more porridge, more bread, more ale. You notice increased activity around Arthur's headquarters. Messengers arrive on horseback, are admitted to the stone building, and leave again in haste. Something is happening. Saxon movement near the old lead mines, Garant explains, noticing your interest. Scouts reported it yesterday. Arthur's been expecting this. They're testing our response time, our ability to coordinate between settlements. Will we march? Someone from your group asks. Excitement and anxiety mixing in his voice. Garant shrugs. Arthur decides, but we train for a reason. The afternoon brings more drills, but different now. Breaking camp, efficiently marching in formation, setting up defensive positions in various terrains, practical skills for A, mobile force rather than settlement defense. As the training concludes, Boris addresses a combined unit. Be ready, he says simply. Tonight, check your weapons, your equipment. We may move at dawn. The possibility of imminent action sends ripples of tension through the camp. Men examine spear, points for rust, check shield bindings for weakness, count their meager personal possessions to ensure nothing essential will be left behind. You remember your promised meeting with Taliesin after the evening meal. As others prepare for potential departure, you make your way to the healer's quarters at the edge of the camp. The small stone building is warm inside, herbs hanging from rafters filling the air with a complex mixture of scents, some pleasant, others medicinal and sharp. Taliesin sits by a small fire, grinding leaves in a mortar. He looks up as you enter, unsurprised by your arrival. Bedwyr of Camlan, he says, setting aside his work. Sit. We have much to discuss, and perhaps little time. He gestures to a wooden stool near the fire. You sit, uncertain how to begin. Taliesin solved this problem by speaking first. Merdin believes your dreams are messages, he says. I'm not so certain. Tell me what you see when you sleep. You describe the fragments, metal carriages, towering buildings, devices that connect people across vast distances. You mention the sense of displacement, of belonging to another world while trapped in this one. Taliesin listens without interruption, his weathered face revealing nothing. When you finish, he's silent for a long moment, adding small sticks to the fire. There are many possibilities. He finally says, the simplest is that you've heard stories from travelers, tales of distant lands with strange customs, and your sleeping mind weaves them into vivid dreams. You shake your head. These aren't places that exist in this world. No, how can you be certain? Taliesin's eyes fix on yours. The world is vast, Bedwyr. Beyond the lands we know lie others with wonders we can scarcely imagine. But his tone suggests he doesn't entirely believe this explanation himself. Another possibility, he continues, is that the old gods speak, to you showing visions of what might be. The future unfolds in many directions, and sometimes sensitive minds glimpse what might come to pass. This explanation feels closer to the truth, though still not quite right. How can you explain that you're experiencing memories, not prophecies? Or perhaps, Taliesin says more quietly, you are not fully of this world at all. This strikes closer to your unspoken thoughts. You lean forward. What do you mean? There are stories very ancient of people who exist in two places at once. Their body in one world, their spirit partly in another. The Druid spoke of thin places, where the boundaries between worlds grow permeable. He studies your reaction. These are dangerous ideas in Christian times. To speak of other worlds risks accusations of heresy. Do you believe such things are possible? You ask. Taliesin smiles slightly. I believe there is much we don't understand, Bedwyr. The Christians have their mysteries. Bread becoming flesh, water becoming wine. Why should the older traditions not have mysteries of their own? He rises, moving to a small chest in the corner. From it, he removes a bundle wrapped in faded cloth, placing it on the table between you. Merdin sent this with a messenger, who arrived yesterday. He said you should have it. You unwrap the bundle. Carefully, inside lies a small object that seems impossibly out of place. A metal disc with strange markings, clearly neither Roman nor British in origin. You recognize it immediately as a modern watch, though its face is cracked and it no longer functions. This was found on your person when you were discovered unconscious near the old stone circle 2 winters ago. Taliesin explains Merdin kept it, believing it significant. The watch represents a tangible connection to your other life, confirmation that your experiences aren't merely dreams or delusions. But how did it come here with you? And why? Can't you remember the transition between worlds? What does it mean? You ask, though you suspect Taliesin has no more answers than you do. That is for you to discover. He replies, but know this, Merdin believes you are here for a purpose, that your knowledge of another world gives you insight we lack. Before you can respond, a horn sounds outside, 3 long blasts that cut through the evening quiet. Taliesin's expression grows serious. The muster call, he says, rising quickly. Arthur has decided to march. We'll have to continue this conversation another time if the fates allow. You pocket the watch and hurry back to your barracks where the men of Camlan are already gathering their meager possessions, checking weapons, preparing for movement. Saxon band near the old lead mines. Someone explains breathlessly. Larger than expected. Arthur's gathering the full force to intercept them before they reach the settled lands. This is it. Your first experience of Arthur's military operation in action. The historical reality behind legends of grand campaigns and glorious battles. Not a quest of magical items or the rescue of fair maidens, but the practical defense of farmlands and settlements against an expanding threat. The camp transforms with impressive efficiency, men forming into units, supplies being distributed, horses saddled for scouts and messengers. The military discipline that Arthur has instilled proves its worth as hundreds of warriors prepare to move without chaos or confusion. Bors finds your group amid the activity. We march in half an hour, he announces. Light loads, full waterskins, 3 days' rations. He studies your faces in the fading light. Stay together. Follow commands. Remember your training. Simple instructions for men facing their first major military action under Arthur's leadership. Not a stirring speech about glory and honor, but practical advice focused on survival and effectiveness. As darkness falls, torches are lit throughout the camp. Arthur himself appears, moving among the gathered forces, checking preparations. He stops, Near your group? Checking. Injuries, commending courage, ensuring proper care for all. The dead are laid in rows. British warriors to be buried with honor. Saxon dead to be interred separately, but still with basic dignity. This is Arthur's way. Respect for all warriors regardless of allegiance. You find yourself helping with the wounded, applying Merdin's medicines to cuts and gashes, offering water to parched throats. The reality of combat bears no resemblance to romantic notions of later medieval tales. It's brutal, desperate, and leaves even the victors bloodied and exhausted. Arthur moves among the survivors, checking injuries, commending courage, ensuring proper care for all. When he reaches your group, he pauses, noting your efforts with the wounded. You fought. Well, it says simply, Camlan chose its representatives wisely. This brief acknowledgement, not flowery praise, but straightforward recognition means more than elaborate commendations would. The historical Arthur understands that in the aftermath of battle, men need reassurance that their suffering serve a purpose, that their efforts were valued. As the day progresses, order is restored to the battlefield. The wounded are prepared for transport back to Cadbury. Scouts monitor the retreating Saxons to ensure they continue eastward. The mining area is secured with a small garrison to prevent immediate reoccupation. By evening, campfires to field as Arthur's forces rest before the journey. Home. The mood is subdued. Victory tempered by losses. Exhaustion limiting. Celebration. Men speak quietly of comrades who fell, of moments when the battle could have turned either way, of what the success means for the larger conflict with Saxon expansion. Near the central fire, Taliesin plays his harp softly, offering comfort through music rather than words. The melodies are gentle, soothing to men who have experienced the harsh realities of combat. Arthur sits nearby, his face thoughtful in the firelight, as he considers both the day's victory and the continuing challenges ahead. You find a quiet spot at the edge of the camp, finally able to process your experiences. This is Arthur's Britain, not the romantic realm of later legends, but a harsh world of survival where civilization hangs by a thread, where men fight and die to preserve what remains of fading order against forces that would reshape the land completely. And yet, within this harsh reality, you can see the seeds of the enduring legend. Arthur's exceptional leadership, his corps of loyal warriors, his attempt to maintain Roman discipline and organization in a post-Roman world, all would be transformed by centuries of retelling into familiar Arthurian cycle. The historical Arthur, if this is indeed the figure behind the myths, is more impressive in his practical reality than in romantic embellishment. Not a magical king with supernatural allies, but a war leader fighting against overwhelming odds, trying to preserve something of civilization when collapse seems inevitable. As night deepens and exhaustion finally overcomes reflection, you lie back looking up at stars that shine with unprecedented clarity in this world without light pollution. The same stars that shine on your other life, your modern existence that now seems increasingly distant, dreamlike. This is your reality now. A warrior in Arthur's forces, part of the historical events that will someday be transformed into Britain's greatest legend. Not wielding Excalibur or seeking the Holy Grail, but maintaining a shield wall against Saxon advance, preserving what can be saved of fading civilization. It's a purpose that brings its own kind of peace. The knowledge that whatever happens, you're part of something that will echo through centuries, that will inspire generations long after the historical details are forgotten. The once and future king and those who fought beside him, entering the realm of legend, even as they live out their ordinary, extraordinary lives. Sleep comes easily, despite the hard ground and cooling air. Your dreams are quieter now, less troubled by the clash between worlds. Perhaps you're finding your place in this reality, accepting its harsh truths while contributing to its fragile hopes. And perhaps somewhere, in the distant future, someone will tell the story of Arthur and his warriors, transformed by time and retelling, embellished with magic and romance, but still preserving something of essential truth that in Britain's darkest hour, when civilization seemed on the verge of collapse, men and women stood together against the tide of history, fighting not just for survival, but for the preservation of knowledge, culture, and identity that might otherwise be lost forever. Their names would change in the telling. Bedwyr becoming Bedwyr, Kai becoming Kay Taliesin, merging with Merdin to become Merlin. Their deeds would be magnified, their ordinary courage transformed into superhuman feats. But something of their essential spirit would remain, inspiring each new generation that encountered the legends of Arthur and his knights. As consciousness fades into the peaceful realm of sleep, you understand that you're part of that legacy, not just witnessing history, but helping to create the foundation of stories that will endure for centuries, a purpose worthy of the struggles and dangers of this harsh but vital world. And with that thought, you drift into the deepest, most restful sleep you've experienced since arriving in Arthur's Britain, your modern bed, a distant memory compared to the simple peace of having found your place in the flow of history and legend.